Good morning, Wake Up HCC. Cris Oviedo here with you. Technology was really tripping this morning as I was trying to set us live at 10 a.m. and it's now actually right before 10 a.m. and it's now 10:07. So if you were waiting for the live show, my apologies. Just Facebook doing its thing in its very technological fashion. And I guess it's very appropriate, right? It's like you're going to talk about technology this morning. So I'm just going to give you a hard time since you're going to be talking about me, I guess is what Facebook was saying today. So, and, this morning I have a couple of guests with me. We're going to be covering one of the newest apprenticeship that we have at Howard Community College is the software development apprenticeship. It's a new wave. It's this 2020 has proven, if nothing else, that technology is an intricate part of our lives. I mean, we are home when we were told that we needed to be home. Um, I would imagine 20 years ago, it would have meant something very, very different to the world than what it has meant today. Like working from home would have not been an option for many, many people. Studying probably would not be happening, and so many other things, right, that right now we're able to continue thanks to technology. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. We're going to bring some light to that, and we're going to talk about this really exciting opportunity that Howard Community College has developed. And for that, I am joined by Vignesh Rajan, and he is the Vice President of Engineering and Microsoft Solutions at New Wave Technology. Good morning and welcome.
Thanks for having me, Chris.
And I also have Adrienne Summers, and she's the Director of Apprenticeships and Workforce Innovation at Howard Community College. Welcome, Adrienne.
Thank you, Chris.
I am very excited to have both of you here with me today to talk about, this new apprenticeship. I have to admit, Adrienne, apprenticeships are something that were new to me. That I've learned only through our conversations as we have been preparing all of the series of interviews where we've been diving into the different ones that HCC offers for students and for a community really at large. And it's something that I wish I had actually learned more of when I was a student. And it's kind of like a no-brainer to me because like what can we do more, right? Like can we make all education into this modality of apprenticeship? When you look for a job, one of the first things that they ask is you have to have, you're an 18-year-old who just graduated from high school and they are asking you for 15 years of experience. And I'm exaggerating clearly to give you a certain job, right? And it's like, well, if you're trying to get your education and you're trying to find a job and you're trying to move ahead, there's all of these barriers that I personally feel that apprenticeships are just kind of like breaking, and they're just taking away and they're opening doors for a lot of students. So let's start with you, Adrienne. Tell us a little bit about you. Tell us a little bit about your passion, where that passion comes from to work with apprenticeship and education. And maybe just tell us also a little bit in there of what an apprenticeship really is and how it's different. Maybe there's people like me who have never heard of that concept before, are still getting familiar with it. How it's different from an internship, a volunteer opportunity, or anything else out there.
Perfect. Yes, I'd love to talk about apprenticeship. That is one of my passions. My background, I'll start first, is I've been in community colleges for more than about 12 years now. So I have a very diverse background with community colleges, both on the credit and the non-credit side. The fun part about apprenticeship is, as you stated, it opens up so many opportunities for the students. Typically, an apprenticeship is an opportunity to do on-the-job training, be hired by a company to begin a career. The company is going to provide a mentor to you as the apprentice/student. And that's basically someone that's going to help navigate you, teach you the culture of the environment, teach you the culture of the tasks that need to be completed. Companies do provide a progressive wage because, again, this is an entry-level position. And as you gain more schooling, so complete more classes, as well as, complete the tasks and the on-the-job training, those wages are going to increase. So at the end of the apprenticeship, you have, you've earned your wages. Your schooling is normally being paid for by the employer. You have a career, the on-the-job experience, the related instruction, and the great part about it is for the student, typically there's no student debt. For the employer, they have trained someone from the ground up. And they stay their employee. So it is truly a career. This does not end at the end of the apprenticeship. This is only the beginning of the relationship that continues with the employer. And at that point in time, the employer has provided that entry-level mentorship and literally trained them the way that they want to be trained for their business. So it's phenomenal. HCC started apprenticeship in 2018, so a little more than 2 years ago. I was responsible for that initial start, and here we are a little more than 2 years later. And HCC now has 10 apprenticeship opportunities for students. So that's a huge growth in a very short amount of time. We're still growing. We still have more apprenticeships that we are looking to expand. And we're certainly always looking for employers to partner to develop their talent pipeline.
And I love that you brought that up. I love that you brought the expansion and how it's growing. If you read the description, the caption that I have on there for this apprenticeship, this is one of the newest ones that HEC has developed. And we're going to talk about that process. We're going to talk about how it works to create maybe a new one, how that partnership works. But Vignesh, I want to get to know you a little bit better as well. And I want you to tell us a little bit about who you are, and also, when you were deciding what you were going to do, when you were looking at careers, what inspired you to go into the world of software development?
Absolutely. Thank you for that, Adrian. Really good explanation about apprenticeship. Kudos on that. So I actually began my journey into, I took my bachelor's in computer engineering, but very soon I realized that, I wanted to do something different. I wanted to be more hands-on, and that's the beauty about IT or software development, right? You have instant gratification. All you need is laptop and Wi-Fi. And that's it. If you have the programming languages installed on your laptop, you can solve pretty much any problem out there, right? Like you just have to understand the requirements, digest it, and convert that into code that can solve the problem. I talk about software developers as artists because you have that creative mind that you got to basically understand the problem, analyze what they're looking for, and build something. So pretty soon, I shifted gears from software engineering to computer engineering to computer science, and I took my master's in computer science. And ever since I've been embarked onto this journey, I'm a tech enthusiast. I like, solving problems using technology, and I believe the world has way more problems to solve using technology. Actually, if you think about it, for all the new apprentices out there thinking about this program, there's no field other than, at least there are very few fields out there that actually spans across the board. Like, the pandemic has given us a very good use case right here, right? If it wasn't for technology, God knows what we would have been doing, right? Like, we wouldn't have even had this conversation that we're having right now. And, there are many more problems, many more problems that, technology can solve. And a lot of enterprises and industries out there have embarked into this digital transformation journey. So New Wave is positioning ourselves to be in the forefront of that. And this particular program is definitely going to help us build a talent pool like Adrian was referring to.
Adrian, you kind of touched, we started this conversation a little bit already, where you said that this was one of the newest ones. This whole process of bringing apprenticeship into Howard Community College has been since 2018, so it's pretty young still, right? It's pretty new.
Yeah.
There's 10 right now. You guys are looking to build more. Tell us a little bit about how that process works. Like, how do you guys determine, which kind of apprenticeships are important to bring into Howard Community College, the opportunities that maybe the market's looking for, maybe the students are looking for. And then how do you find partners? How do you, find the new waves and other companies out there to work with you guys?
So lots of different ways. Again, there's so many different variations of the apprenticeship, but certainly Howard Community College serves the community of Howard County, and we're certainly willing to sit down and have conversations with employers in the area, which we have done many times. We've also developed some advisory boards, potentially the different occupations. We've had members from various companies make up a group, and we basically go through and talk about what, as employers, they would like to see HCC as far as the courses that they would like to offer, the timeframes, any particulars that works best for them. For example, our construction management, the group actually met together and determined that Friday would be the best day for the students to attend class. So the students work Monday through Thursday and attend HCC on Fridays. So that takes a combined effort across the entire campus to make sure that we have the course offerings available on Fridays. But it's great for the students. They're not taking an evening. They literally are doing it all day on Friday. Most of our other apprenticeships typically are 2 evenings per week. And again, that is what the employers would prefer, is the evening option, with some of them do offer some Saturday labs or additional training sections. So that is how we start. I mean, obviously we have to have the interest. We do prefer, this is not necessarily for an occupation that someone may come forward to us and want only one employee. This is typically an occupation that's going to have more than one. Now, it doesn't mean that one employer doesn't take one, but hopefully we have a combined employer effort that they are going to each take 1 or 2 apprentices. So it can work with an individual company with one. But most of our occupations are built to be able to do that. New Wave came to us. Again, there was some Vignesh is actually an adjunct professor at HCC. So he was fully aware of the offerings that HCC could offer us. We sat down and had many discussions over what the curriculum would look like, how we were going to offer, how he wanted the employees trained, developed a plan. The plan is then submitted to the Maryland Department of Labor, and the Maryland Department of Labor has a council, which is the Maryland Apprenticeship Training Council, that actually does approve all of the requests that go through for apprenticeship. So we were approved to offer the 3 different occupations with New Wave. And the 3 occupations that are officially what the names are through the Maryland Department of Labor are software developer, software engineer, which is normally referred to as DevOps, and a data engineer, which is referred to as data warehousing specialist. So the job title of the actual company, which is New Wave, may be slightly different, but those occupations do line up across the board. One of the fabulous things about apprenticeship is once a student, an apprentice, is finished the apprenticeship, they're going to end up with a national credential. So apprenticeship has recognition all across the country through the United States Department of Labor. In addition to the credentials that the students will end up specifically with this particular program.
That's fantastic. That's empowering, quite empowering, quite honestly. I mean, I'm thinking about, my daughter, my son, they're young kids. My daughter is 17, and these opportunities for her would be fantastic, so she can propel her career, so that she can really, not only that, but start hands-on right there already in the industry, which is really difficult to find a job in your career when you're first starting, right? And I can imagine that that's also going to put them in the ladder, for success I would imagine like at a faster pace than maybe somebody like me who had to go through school first and then, with very little to no experience, only what I got through internships and other opportunities that were only temporary. Try to build that case for myself. And I had to really go and prove myself when they're already doing that within the career through the apprenticeship.
Absolutely. It does take a while for a student, to end up with that degree at the end because they are working full time, earning that on the job training. And we are seeing quite a few of our applicants across the board. They have completed their 4-year degree. They did not have on the job training or they did not complete an internship. And they're having a very difficult time getting hired because they don't have experience. So they're coming back to us, even with a 4-year degree, they're coming back to HCC to begin the apprenticeship because it is giving them the on-the-job training, plus the certifications, plus the career.
And I'm so glad that you brought that up. And I'm so glad that you opened the door for everybody who's listening and watching, because maybe you're thinking, well, I already did my career, so too bad, right? This conversation's not for me. Or, well, I at some point in my life maybe considered doing something like that, but ended up going in a different path and I have a career. Um, but I always had that in the back of my mind that maybe I should have gone this way. Well, you might be able to do it. You might be able to find, that an apprenticeship is exactly what you need in order to switch your careers or to advance your career. Yes, understanding that you'll still be going back to school and it'll be education, but it might be really really worth it in the long run. So definitely consider it. Definitely consider study it, depending where you are in life. If you're just graduating from high school, if you've already worked in a different industry for many years and want to switch, or if you graduated and want to move forward but are not finding the right door, this might be it. This might be the little wedge that opens that door for you. Vignesh, tell us, we've already heard from HEC and I didn't realize that there was a connection there with you and HEC as well. But tell us a little bit more. You mentioned that, the opportunity and the training that you guys provide the students as employees is part of the reason why you decided to do it at New Wave, right?
Yeah.
Tell us a little more about that. Tell us a little more about, what inspired you guys to really say, we want to take this opportunity, we see the value on it, and we want to bring students into New Wave. We want to offer these apprenticeships.
Absolutely. Before I jump into that, I just want to paint the picture of who New Wave is, because, for the folks on the Facebook live stream, I really want them to understand who New Wave is as an enterprise. So we've been in business for 15 plus years. We are a full IT service enterprise. Primarily, we specialize in basically merging government and state-of-the-art technologies together. The way we do that is we understand what's going on. See, technology changes every day, right? Mm-hmm. So we always are constantly learning. We are looking at proof of concepts, building new ideas, and trying to solve problems that the government has. In addition to our government business, we also have 2 subsidiaries, which are primarily focused in the healthcare space. They build products and platforms. So there's a lot of opportunities that New Wave is going after. But one pattern that I've seen, and the leadership has seen, is I had the opportunity to hire close to half a dozen to a dozen interns a few months, a year ago. And the pattern that we have noticed is these interns, obviously they needed a lot of hand holding and, grooming them and all that good stuff. But the growth mindset that they brought to the table and their willingness to take up the challenge and get it done and making them more New Wave ready, because, we were closely working with them, in grooming them and making them New Wave ready. That's a tag that we put on for, whoever goes through our programs. Has been a much successful program. The throughput that we have seen through them versus someone that we have got from the industry was, day and night. Not to say that experience doesn't matter. Experience absolutely matters. But what the pattern that we have seen is getting interns with that right mindset and with that right willingness to, solve a problem using technology has been much more, positive. That's the pattern that we have seen. Now, just replaying back to the question that you've asked, why are we doing this, right? Why did New Wave sign up for the apprenticeship program, especially with HCC? Obviously, I was associated with HCC as part of the adjunct professor tagline. Not just that, Howard County in general emphasizes a lot on STEM programs. And for folks who don't know what STEM is science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. HCC is like in the heart of Howard County. So we believe that, the students who come to HCC are the ones with that right mindset who understand technology. They may not have the experience, but who we are looking for is the one with that right mindset who understand at least what software engineering best practices are, or, in practices in general, and who are willing to learn and be groomed, right? If you have the right growth mindset, I think we can go places. And back to why we are doing this with HCC and why apprenticeship is important, it goes back to that pattern that we have seen with the programs that we had in the past with our internship program, and also with where HCC is in the heart of Howard County, which is known for STEM programs. So the combination of these two really put us in the spot where we believed, my leadership believed, Patrick Muniz, who is the CEO for the company, believed that this is the right move to, pair up. Hence why we are here. We are super excited about this program, and we can't wait to work with, the folks joining this program. So
I find that businesses are talking more and more about, right? And it's investing in your employees. And that's exactly what you're doing here. You're bringing, students and you're investing in them. You're really helping them. I mean, train them, educate them. You're really trying to bring them up into your company. I mean, from the ground, you're building careers with them and putting them right there at the center. And I think that's super important because that creates a sense of loyalty in your employers. If they have that loyalty, if they have that commitment, if they feel that where they are, it's a place that cares for them, they're going to care for the place as well. They're going to care for their job, for their careers as well. And the quality of the work, the quality of the products, the quality of just the work environment it just goes up exponentially. So I really appreciate all that you said, because and we could turn that into a whole hour conversation on its own. But we're not going to go there right now.
Yeah. I just wanted to add one point to that, Chris. The one pattern, or this is a true statement, although a lot of industry leaders don't look at it that way, or don't have that in their conscious, is the number one asset for any enterprise or any entity for that matter, even Howard County Community College, right, is their employees, right? Like if you spend time and you groom, or you educate your employees, or you take them to the next level, you're going to see the return in investment at some point of time. Just economics aside, it just creates a positive culture, and that's what we are striving for at New Wave.
I love that you said economics aside, because one of the things that I've heard from a couple of people that I've interviewed is, when I go to HEC and I don't know where to go, I have asked people, and even if they were busy at their desk, they've been like, oh, let me just walk you, at least closer. If I can't walk you all the way there, let me just kind of tell you and guide you. And I think it's because of exactly what you said, because we have leadership at HEC who cares about us. And so therefore we pass that care to anybody that we encounter at HEC, because it's just the environment that we're in, right? It's how it works at HEC. And so if we are provided with that, then as you said, economics aside, we are providing that to everybody else, and that just makes a better experience for everybody. From the mentality or from the mindset of New Wave, right? Because we've also learned from Adrian what an apprenticeship is. But from you guys, what is the goal of the apprenticeship? What is, the main reason to have these apprenticeships at New Wave? And I know we've talked about, that experience and that relationship of New Wave and the employees, but I just don't think that we can emphasize enough, because we understand from the practicality of the apprenticeship, right? but I really want to understand, and I really want people to get to see, what's behind the mind of an employer. It was so empowering for you, for me to hear, experience, yes, it matters, but we want to get that mentality. We want to get that person who is bringing something more than just that experience. And I have a feeling that that's kind of where the heart of this question is going to go.
Oh, absolutely. So New Wave, when it was set up, right? Like, 15 years ago, it was just one man's mind, brainchild, Patrick Muniz, right? His whole idea was to disrupt the industry, like, the healthcare industry. When he started, probably he had a lot of naysayers, right? Like, people just telling it's a big of a challenge to do. But fast forward 15 years from now, he has done that, right? Like, we as a company have done that. We want to not stop here. We want to go up to the next level, which is why we created these two subsidiaries that are building products, and we are going into the product mindset from a project mindset, right? So while we do this, it's absolutely number one priority for us to build a talent pool, because if we are going after new opportunities, we want to make sure the staff that we have, A, are ready for the challenge, and B, we have a pool of talent that can take up the challenge. So, and I believe apprenticeship falls right in between over there, where it helps us make our apprentice new wave ready, which is actually, when I say new wave ready, it's a tag that we put on, but that really means grooming them into these latest technologies. Like, there are a lot of engineering universities out there, computer science universities. Even HCC teaches a lot of computer science courses, but what you need in the industry is more than that. Like, if colleges take you to A, industries would need you to be at T, maybe. So we are filling the gap by actually bringing them on board, grooming them in the technologies that we believe are cutting edge and state of the art that we would need for our future opportunities. And it's a win-win situation, right? Like, they're earning while they're learning, right? Like, I keep saying this to Adrian when we started this many months ago, is I wish I had some kind of a program like this when I started off my career. Maybe I would have been in a different trajectory than where I'm right now. Now, I don't want to go back in time. We don't have a time machine, but the point here that I'm trying to emphasize for someone debating whether they want to join this program or not is, it's a no-brainer, right? Like, you're going to learn state-of-the-art technologies. It's not just that. When you work in an industry, especially in IT sector, it's all about being a team player. It's all about knowing how to manage your time. It's all about prioritizing the right way. So you are embarking this journey and being with us for the next year or two as part of this program is not just going to teach you technology, but it's going to teach you every other pieces in the puzzle that you would need in order for you to be successful, right? You could be an entrepreneur in a year or two, right? Like, everything that this we are trying to do here is just gonna go towards that, right? Like, it's a win-win situation. That's, I guess, the bottom line that I could tell, right? It benefits New Wave for sure, but it tremendously benefits whoever goes through this program, is what I can attest to. Yeah.
I can't agree with you more. Let's maybe paint that picture a little bit better, right? You just talked about the pieces of the puzzle. So
Yeah.
for an apprentice who's coming to New Wave, what are some of those pieces? What are the some of those things that they might be doing, when they come in? What is a day at New Wave for an apprentice kind of look like?
Sure. Really good question. So what we are looking for, let me start off with that and maybe just walk through, because it kind of helps. We want someone with growth mindset and someone who's really up for challenges, right? Like, today, you could be working on the other, a particular activity. Tomorrow, if priorities shift, you're going to switch gears, right? So we want that level of, that's how the world of IT works, right? Like, there's always competing priorities. Who thought that the pandemic would come in place? There are a lot of initiatives that probably HCC, New Wave, every other enterprise have focused on, the pandemic dropped and boom, things changed, right? Like you just had to prioritize or reprioritize in order to, sustain and, be in progress. So we want that level of mindset, a growth mindset, someone who's always willing to learn and always up for challenge. That's what we're looking for. Going back to the day of life of an apprentice at New Wave, initially, because we want them to groom and be ready and be New Wave ready, we're going to put them into intensive curriculum where they're going to learn depending on what track they pick. Like, oh, we pick together. We have the software development track, the computer in, the DevOps track. That's how I remember it. And then the data engineering track. Depending on what track we pick, the expectation is technology, right? Like software, at some level. That's going to basically complement what we're going to basically put you as part of the training program. So 80% of your time initially is going to go towards learning, and we are going to constantly monitor how that's going to go, right? Learning is combination of theoretical and practical aspects of it. So theory is what you're going to initially focus on. And then from a practical standpoint, we are then going to slowly plug you all into these different initiatives that we have going on across these 3 different subsidiaries that we've got, right? Like we have products being built on 2 of our subsidiaries. We have our government services. So we have a lot of good initiatives going on. The practicality of your theory that you have learned is going to be put to use, once you get up to speed with your theory part. There are certifications that we're going to constantly monitor. Everything that you learn is going to have vendor-driven certification. Just to give you an example, if you actually learn the Azure cloud, which is Microsoft's infrastructure cloud, and you go through the administration track or the program, like you actually can potentially sit down for an Azure administrator exam. Once you clear that exam, you get the Azure administrator certificate from Microsoft. So although you're going through this training program with us, we are going with industry-driven certifications and programs. So again, it benefits us because we are now building a talent pool, right? And it also benefits you because you're actually racking up more certs than where you currently stand. So that's the day of life of an apprenticeship. And I'm more than happy to clarify even further if you would like to, Chris.
I think it is important because you talked about the theory at first, and Adrian did tell us at the beginning that every internship is different and it's set up differently. So I think, for those who are listening and watching and might be considering, I think it's important. So the theory part, is that happening in the classroom? Is that happening at HEC? Is that happening with you guys? Are they coming and are you guys giving them some sort of training? And when do they get, because I know that we all get excited, right? I'm a hands-on learner, so I'm like, okay, great, the theory is great, but when am I going to get my hands on the computer? When am I going to get my hands on whatever it is that I like to do? So I think if we can just kind of like paint that a little bit better, I think that'd be helpful.
So we started this planning pre-pandemic, right? Like, the initial thought process was, New Wave has a beautiful state-of-the-art training, space in one of our, locations. So we were intending to use that in order to, get all of our apprenticeship in a room, get them up to speed and, from a training standpoint, and then, use that session there to, go deeper. But given the pandemic, New Wave is 100% remote, because, and with the cases rising, I don't see us going back to work anytime soon. But that doesn't stop us from this program. That's the beauty about IT, right? Going back to, we are having the Zoom call virtually, right? Like, we all are in 3 different locations having this conversation. So we're going to leverage, Microsoft Teams, Zoom, and also there's an online learning platform that Microsoft has put together that we're going to leverage, where we can keep track of individual apprenticeships progress on how are they doing from, their learning perspective. And that's the Microsoft Learning, they put this platform together. We're going to leverage that platform in order to get the theory part solidified. Once that happens, depending on, everyone has a different learning curve, everybody does it differently. Like, you could have someone who could knock it off in 2 nights, someone who could take a week to do it. What we are going to do is, depending on that individual use case, once they are ready for prime time, we'll slowly start involving them into these different initiatives that we have got going. Again, it depends on how good they are, and they're gonna, at that point, everyone is gonna have a mentor, right? Like, they're gonna have this conversation with their mentor, and depending on how they are doing from a theoretical standpoint, we're gonna put them into these real world practical problems. Not to say that when I say theory, it's not just reading. I just want to clarify that you're still going to work on proof of concepts. Like, we are going to give you a fictitious challenge, right? Like, okay, you learned this. Now this is your problem. Go solve it, right? Like, you're still practically focusing on it, but the end game of that practicality is not real world, so to say, right? It's fictitious. So that's why I break it down in my mind as theory and practical. The practical is working on real world projects that we have got, the multiple initiatives. But from an apprentice perspective, just because I'm saying theory doesn't mean you're just reading out there and, learning stuff, because IT is one of those fields where I keep telling this to most of my interns, and I'm just going to say that is, just because you watch cooking videos doesn't mean you're a cook, right? You got to practice. I can watch videos all day long and claim that I'm an Italian, a chef. It doesn't work that way. Same holds true for IT. You got to put your theory to practice, and that's where the proof of concepts comes into play, right? You have seen this. Now, how do you put that to practice? Everyone brings a different thought process. That's where the creative piece comes into picture, right? How you solve the problem. That's where we're going to analyze and understand, okay, this particular apprenticeship is a rock star. Let's put him onto this program, him or her onto this program. So it's a combination of both. I hope that helped.
That was very helpful, and it really helped us understand how it works. It also gave me this idea that is even personalized, that you're really meeting the students where they are and working with them, which many times in a classroom, there's expectations, there's deadlines, and there's no real time for the teachers as much as they try to work with you. I mean, they'll be able to do certain things and accommodations, but to have this opportunity to already be at a job site and really taking all of this theory and learning, and not only that, but knowing that you can advance it based on your personal abilities, and that's been taken into consideration. I mean, that was huge for me, and I'm really glad that you brought that up. Adrian, tell me a little bit about maybe the impact that you've seen, from apprenticeship that you guys have offered, and people who have graduated, or maybe they're still part of it and they're still working on it, getting close to the end. What have you seen? What impact, what kind of influence have you seen in their lives, and change have you seen?
So there's a lot of variations. So we will have our first completers of an apprenticeship in May. That will be in the construction management 2-year program. So that's our first set of completers. We still have others that are in the program. That our HVAC program will be next May for 4 years. And then some of the other IT programs that we have will be next year also. So next year is truly, a really, great year that we'll have between 21 and 22, which is, we're really excited for. And I just want to reiterate too, we have all different types of apprenticeship. I do want to just clarify some definitions. Internship is something that is typically a temporary opportunity. Typically, it only lasts for a semester or potentially a little bit longer than a semester, but it does come to an end. Apprenticeship is long-term. Once you start, you complete. So that's the key point of the apprenticeship. I'm sorry, you probably wanted me to answer a few other questions. I can say with our software development, we do both a hybrid. So there are credit classes that the students will complete, as well as some non-credit classes based on the Azure. coursework that will be completed, which is a request from New Wave. So that's something else. All of our apprentices during this pandemic are still working. They've all ironically been essential employees. We've not had anyone that's been laid off or furloughed. So they all are still working with the companies. I think it's great to be able to hear the apprentices talk about their work experiences because they're still working, and they're all experiencing it a little bit different through this pandemic, because not every company is exactly the same and not every company is working on exactly the same projects. So I think all of us have had to pivot somewhat. And sometimes it's pivoting for a good reason. Sometimes, it is a little frustrating because we're not in the environment that we intended on being in. But definitely, this is an opportunity to truly be able to position yourself to move forward. Because if nothing else, this pandemic has certainly shown everyone that we can continue, although a little bit differently. So it's that flexibility, that adaptability. How can we adapt to move forward? Because we're all going to have to learn to adapt to be able to get all the projects and the work done. And that's the beauty of the apprenticeship, because as the companies are adapting, they're teaching the apprentices. And it's not something, they're really doing it real world right then and there, which is something that's really, really good to see.
Right. And I say only as if it was like simple or anything like that. But when you're a student, right, you're learning, as Vignesh said earlier, the theory of it. Then you're really just reading about it, and then you're really just talking about it. When you're doing an apprenticeship, I mean, I'm sure that when the pandemic hit, those conversations had to be had from the employers to the students. And I mean, it's real life, it's real world happening right there. It's not theory anymore. It's
Right.
we need to adapt, we need to be flexible. And the other thing that you mentioned that I want to go back to is, you made that differentiation between the internship and an apprenticeship. And I know that many people do an internship because they're like, hopefully it's going to lead into a job. Maybe it will create an opportunity. They'll get to know me, and there's a lot of value in an internship. I did so many of them. It opens your network. It gives you opportunities that you wouldn't get otherwise. So I'm not dismissing that. They are wonderful. And like I said, I did many of them. And through that experience and through the portfolio that I was able to build through them, I was able to prove to employers and show the kind of work and the quality work that I was capable of doing. But what I really appreciate about an apprenticeship is that, you said internships that are temporary. An apprenticeship not only is something that you start and you end, it's something that, I mean, you have 90% possibility of having a job, from what I am understanding. Or do you are always hired with the company afterwards?
So you're hired at the beginning of an apprenticeship. So you're hired, that's your career. When the apprenticeship finishes, meaning the related instruction and the time that you had to put in to be a completer, you still continue to work for that company. So that doesn't end. And I will say that most of the companies, again, they are putting forth, they're providing a progressive wage. They're also paying for the college tuition, fees, and books. One of the things that most of our employers do request is for their return on investment that there be a period of time that they serve at the end of their apprenticeship. 2 to 3 years after the apprenticeship ends, the employer wants the apprentice to still stay at their particular company in order to continue working. And that's where the benefit is truly going to come forward, because these students are now ready to truly work. They know they've had the related instruction. They've also had the mentor, and truly doing real life projects that they can then go forward, and they understand how to move forward in that particular company.
So I'm really glad that we clarified that. So you have a job. You have a job while you're in school. When you finish school, you have a job. You are already well in your way to your career. Adrian, where can people find more information? Where can people find registration dates, application processes, available opportunities and everything else that it's involved with an apprenticeship?
So all of our apprenticeship information is on our page on the HCC website. So it is www.howardcc.edu/apprentice. All of the information is there. If they want to reach someone on the apprentice team, our email address is apprentice@howardcc.edu. And you can always go to our homepage, type in apprentice or apprenticeship into the search engine, and it'll bring you right to our page.
Absolutely. The search bar is my favorite friend at the Howard CC website, quite honestly. That's where I always go. We have about 5 more minutes, and I wanted to close this conversation by asking you each to maybe tell me, as we close our conversation, we've given a lot of great information and painted a clear picture of how this apprenticeship work and why it benefits, employers and employees or students, right? But if there was only one thing that you wanted to make sure that both employers and students or potential employees knew and understood and took with them, right, today at the end of this conversation, what would that be? Vignesh, let's start with you.
Sure. Growth mindset, willingness to take up a challenge, and your success, is what's going to define our success, right? Like, so we always want to make sure you're here to make a difference. New Wave is in the business to be a game changer, and we want each one of our employees to have that we want to create that kind of culture and that kind of a mindset, right? Like, just be willing to, just make a difference. Growth mindset is absolutely critical, and making sure you're a cultural fit, making sure you're here to learn and add value. Like, if you fast forward 5 years from now, or even 1 year from now, you should feel proud about what you have accomplished, because that's what's going to accelerate our growth. Your growth is what's going to accelerate New Wave's growth. So that growth mindset, willingness to take challenges, and always being nimble would be the 3 keywords that I'd like anyone listening to this call to, take away.
And I think that applies to both employers and students or potential employees, because as a business, maybe somebody's listening and it's apprenticeship is a new concept. They're not sure. So it's that growth mindset, right? That idea of growing and community, also inclusivity, flexibility. I mean, all of those things that you said, I think that apply very, very well to both employers and employees. Adrian, what would you like people, employers and employees, to really take with them from our conversation today?
So Howard Community College definitely wants to be able to serve the community. So for an employer standpoint, the Department of Labor statistic is apprenticeships have a 94% success rate. So that means at the conclusion of the apprenticeship, you have still retained that particular individual that you have invested to work for your company. So that is a huge statistic. We want to be able to serve the community needs. If there are companies that are struggling with the talent pipeline, we certainly want to have a discussion with them in order to assist them with the apprenticeship model. It may not definitely be the end result that the company may be interested in, but certainly it's an opportunity to explore. And I think especially in the IT fields and some of the other occupations where it's very difficult to find employees, this is an opportunity to truly develop your pipeline, your talent pipeline. From a student standpoint, I want to make sure that students, not necessarily who are high school or have just completed high school graduates, but truly apprenticeship is open to anyone. And we have a very diverse population across all of our programs. We do have traditional high school graduates. We have career changers. We've had stay-at-home moms that have decided to re-enter the job force. We've had retired military. We've had veterans. I'm working with a student right now. He's 30 years old. He just lost his job. He never went to college. He now realizes that he's got to do something that's more sustainable. So he's probably going to be entering one of our next apprenticeship occupations. So that's truly, it's something for everyone. Our apprenticeship team certainly does assist all of our students, all of our employers, and will help you through the process.
It sounds like a world of opportunity, really, just waiting for you out there. This pandemic showed us, flexibility. It also showed us that there's more than just one way that we can do things. And I feel that apprenticeship mimic that, right? Because we've thought of education in one way for a very long time, and it seems like apprenticeship is now this new way of looking at education that it's, to me, it speeds up the process for both the employers, the students as well, because now you're really right there working together, investing in each other. And like I said earlier, that can only lead to great things because it's got to better the environment, for both the employers, the employees, knowing that they care for each other, that they invest in each other, and that they are helping our community grow and create that pipeline of professionals for the years to come. Thank you both so very much for joining me this morning. If there's anything else that you would like to add as we close our conversation, this would be the time to do it.
Yeah. So if anyone wants to reach out to me personally, I'm always active on LinkedIn. Just look up by my name, Vignesh Varden. I'll be more than happy to add you to my network. But thanks for having us on this, Chris. Really appreciate your time this morning.
And thank you. I mean, really, the fact that you guys, as New Wave, said yes, we want to help students. Yes, we see the value in an apprenticeship. I mean, that's really, why we're here this morning, because you guys said we see how important this is. We see the value of it. We want to keep growing. Innovation in education, right? Using technology as the way to do it. I think it's just beautiful. So thank you both so much for joining me this morning. I really appreciate it. I learned a lot, and I think hopefully inspired other people also to dive into this idea of an apprenticeship, to look into it from the employers and from the students' standpoint. Just take a look at that and see if this is right for you, for your company to offer to students, and for you as a student to really further your career.